Well, hello, and welcome to your next episode of With Purpose, the podcast where we learn something together and then take a moment and reflect on what that might mean for ourselves or our leadership journey. This week on With Purpose, we are going to be talking about the idea of a 20-mile march. Jim Collins talks about it in one of his books, Great by Choice, and you might have seen him or heard him mention it on other podcasts or other interviews he's done. Really powerful concept. But first, let's start with a little bit of a story. So recently, I had a chance to go on a bike ride, a pretty long bike ride, actually. I and a group of other three riders, as well as a team that supported us, took a day and we rode all the way across the state of Kansas where we're at in support of refugee organizations. There's so many people in this world that find themselves without a home through no fault of their own. And we wanted to help a few organizations we love raise a little bit of money. So we started on the western border of Kansas at about 7:45 in the morning, and for the next 23 hours and 2 minutes, one of us was riding consistently across the state. And the way we actually broke it up was in segments of 20 miles. So I would ride my 20 miles while the others went ahead, stationed themselves to be ready, and when I got there, the next rider would go, and we'd all move 20 miles down the road. So we started on the western border of Kansas and rode our bikes all the way to the eastern border of Kansas, relay style, not stopping along the way. All together, this took us 23 hours and 2 minutes, 418 miles that we covered. And it was at the same time hard and rewarding. So as I was writing my 20-mile segments, I actually thought a lot about the idea in Great by Choice that Jim Collins talks about of the 20-mile march. So something they saw in great organizations that they studied is they actually had a rhythm to how they grew and how they developed and the goals they set them for themselves, and then how they operated along that path. And the way he introduces it is he actually tells a story about two explorers that were going to the South Pole. Now, one of these explorers had tons of great plans, had all of the parts and pieces they needed to be successful, and they pushed as hard as they could towards that goal. So if the weather was great that day, they would push hard and go really, really far. If their weather was tough, they would still go, but they wouldn't make it as far. And they were just inconsistent in their strategy. The other group had a concept of what they called a 20-mile march. So every day, no matter the weather, if it was great or bad, no matter the obstacles they faced, if they were hard or if they had an easy day, they went 20 miles. And it was this consistent rhythm that gave his team predictability. It gave them opportunities to rest when days were good and that 20 miles was easier. And it also gave them a target to strive towards when the days were hard. They knew that at the end of the 20 miles for that day, they would be done. And I was thinking about this on our bike ride because that's what we did. We rode 20-mile segments. And so there were times when I was riding and the wind was at my back and the terrain was flat or even maybe luckily had a little bit of a downhill. And those were easy. But there were other times that were hard. And I did have a little bit of a headwind on one ride. And on the last segment that I did, it was hill after hill after hill. Contrary to popular belief, Kansas isn't that flat, especially on the eastern side. So lots of hills. And at that point, I was tired. It was early in the morning. The sun was not up yet. And hill after hill came at me. But I knew that at the end of my 20 miles, my team would be waiting there for me with another rider ready to take over. And that's what gave me hope. And that 20-mile rhythm is what kept our team organized and what actually ended up getting us to the end of our journey altogether. So Jim talks in his book about 7 characteristics that they saw in companies that had a successful 20-mile march. So number 1, it's a clear performance indicator. So for us, we had a exact 20-mile marker that we were chasing towards. 2, self-imposed constraint. So we had the discipline, even when we were feeling good, to stop at the 20 miles. That allowed us to rest in between. Great companies have the discipline, even when times are great, to cut off the growth that they might experience and say, we need to be consistent in how we're doing this. The flip side is also true, that when things are hard, you push towards your goal. You push towards the 20 miles. Third, they're appropriate and specific to the enterprise. So the goals that are going to make sense for us or made sense for these companies aren't going to make sense for you. So you have to think very hard about what makes sense for your organization. So fourth, it has to be largely within your company's control to achieve. So don't be thinking about things that you don't have control over. You need to be able to impact the inputs in a way that make this goal achievable, whether things are easy or hard. Fifth, a proper time frame. So it's long enough to manage, yet short enough to have what he calls teeth. So don't make your 20-mile march something that you can only measure once every 3 years, once every even year. You want a regular goal, a regular cadence to keep this momentum going. 6, this is something that you are imposing on yourself. So it only has power if you are electing to do this on purpose. 6 is this is imposed on the company itself. So this only works if this is something you are choosing to do, not something that is chosen for you. And 7 is something that can be achieved with high consistency. So don't think about setting a 20-mile march that sometimes you can measure if you got there and sometimes you can't. It needs to be something that is very measurable and that you can do consistently over and over and over. So that's the idea of a 20-mile march. For us on our bike ride, it was incredibly helpful. We've seen similar things happen within our business, and certainly Collins talks about the benefits of what they saw in other high-growth companies. But I wonder what it looks like for you or for your organization. So let's transition now from our time of learning to a time of reflection. Now, we've created a planner that goes with this. I hope you'll download it from the show notes or hit up the website, benhutton.com/withpurpose, where we'll have a link where you can get it there. This planner is something we produce for you to use as you think about how this lesson might impact you, as well as think about planning your week ahead. Now, we're going to start from a place of gratitude. That's where we always start. And so we'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that question as well as all of the rest of these. If you need more time, just hit the pause button. For me, I was just thinking about how grateful I am to have the opportunities that I have. When we were on this bike ride, thinking about the refugees that we were raising money for, so much in their lives is outside of their control. But for me, and for most of us that are able to listen to this podcast, so much is in our control. And I was just really grateful for how lucky I've gotten in this life. Next up, we need to make a list of the things that we need to do but don't want to. That's what this next section is about. I know you have them. I have them. So make a list of those here and then find some time on your calendar to just get those done this next week. Okay, so now it's time to think about the idea of a 20-mile march and what that means for you. Most of us coming into this podcast probably haven't thought about this. We don't have it for our organization. Try and make a list right here of what that might look like for you. What are some metrics, some measurements, some milestones that you can see that repeat in your life, whether it's from a personal perspective or at your organization, that would make sense to use as a metric for this 20-mile march? After you've thought about that for a little bit, next, make a list of how using one of those metrics could benefit your organization as a whole. One of the benefits on our bike ride was the predictability that this 20-mile march brought us. That was certainly a benefit for the explorers to the South Pole as well. What would a 20-mile march bring to you or your company? Okay, so after you finish those 2 questions, you can take some time, look at your calendar for the week ahead, go through that big pile of to-dos that you've been collecting, and plan the rest of your week. All of us have more things to do than we have time to do it in, and that's what this podcast is all about. Trying to pick the right things to work on at the right time in the right way and doing it all with a little bit of purpose. All right, that's it for this episode of With Purpose. I hope that it has been impactful. We are going to do this every week. I think there's something to learn from basically everything we come in contact with, and it's my goal to share a little bit of that with you each week and to help you plan your week ahead with a little bit of purpose. If you enjoy that, if it's been impactful for you, I hope you'll subscribe, share it with your friends, and I'll see you here next week.